okay, well, my name is Penny. When I was asked to do this, I thought, how could anybody ask me to talk about hope? Because all I could think about was that I was hopeless, because all I thought about was I have no hope that I will ever see my son again. And it even feels like I'm letting him down even by thinking about there being hope. But the more I thought about it, I actually thought, do you know what, this maybe hope that has kept me going. Aidan, we discovered Aidan was taking heroin in 2013, in April of 2013. Now, I didn't know that he was taking other drugs, although it was something we couldn't really talk about. It was the elephant in the room, it was the barrier between us. And I did think, had he got mental health problems? It was very, very, very complex. We found the heroin in his room, and suddenly it all made sense. The mood swings, the anger, the distance, what I thought, as I say, were serious mental health problems. That day, he pulled up his sleeves, and there were the track marks. And Aidan was a giant. He physically was a giant. He's nobody's notion of what a heroin addict, and I hate to use those terms, looks like. So I said to him, what is it you want to do? And by the way, I sound very calm, but everything left my body at that stage. And all I could think about was actually, this is hopeless. Because again, all I could think about was who escapes an addiction to heroin. But he said, I don't want to be addicted to heroin. He also didn't want to go on to another drug. He didn't want addiction. So we talked about it. We said he had to go to the doctor. He had to go to counselling. He had to tell a friend. And he also gave us control over his money. And the other thing was, if he took heroin, and we understood that he was going to have to take it to come down off it, as soon as you do other things, you reduce it, then he had to take it in the house so that we could resuscitate him if necessary. As I say, I kind of at that point felt hopeless, but I started researching ways that he could be supported. Now, he did go to cognitive behavioural therapy, and that was definitely good for him, because it was about learning new patterns, new ways of behaving. But what I did discover was that helping somebody to see the future, to see a life without addiction, is very positive, and that's what we focused on. We painted a picture of the future. And he did over that period of time, and it was very, very difficult for him, and for us as well. He came down, cut the heroin down and down and down, and I was petrified during this time that he would not survive it. I'd never even seen heroin before, although when I saw that syringe I knew exactly what it was. So he reduced his use, and in June he said, look, I can't be bothered anymore taking these little tiny amounts, I'm just going to stop. But we knew there would always be lapses. And that's important as well, that language, and people have asked me about that, why do you call it a lapse and not a relapse? Because a lapse says, this is just temporary, this is a hiccup. A relapse said you just rewound to stage one. So this was always what we said, there'd be a lapse. Same as you're on a diet, you stop drinking, you stop smoking. If you take one cigarette, you don't think I have to go back to stage one. So we knew there would be lapses, but as I say, the plan was he would always take it where he could be helped. In July, it was a week before I and my other children went away. Aidan was standing in the garden, at the top of the garden, and he was looking down the garden. Aidan was a big guy, he was over 6'2", and he was a big guy. It's called BFG, Big Friendly Giant. And he took up so much space because he was quite expressive too, with his arms. And he stretched, and I was sitting in the conservatory, and he stretched up into the air, stretched his back. And then he came in and he said, that's the first time in 5 years I've seen the world like that. And he had seen the future. So he walked into the living room and I followed him in. And I said, Aidan, that is what it's about. It's not about the drugs. It is about you seeing the wonder of the world again. And he did, and he hugged me. And remember, there'd be this barrier in many ways between us, although we were still very close. A big bear hug. And I was hopeful, but the great thing was he was hopeful because he talked about going to India. He talked about developing his career because he knew there was another side to it. And I often say that to people, I don't believe Aidan died addicted to heroin. He died because of a lapse. And I don't even mean that, I don't even mean that in a bad way or a judgmental way. I just mean I think he saw the future. So a week later, I went to Barcelona for a break with my daughter and my other son, Paddy, and his father. My husband stayed at home with Aidan. Aidan didn't want to go because he had missed a little time off work, and I have to say he worked through reducing his heroin. So he didn't want to do that, he wanted to stay there. So we went to Barcelona, and on the 27th of July, and we were in, our apartment was in the Gothic region, and it's painted. I can walk you through every step of that evening. And Paddy had rung me, but it was noisy in the street. So I said, look, I'll ring you back. Couldn't hear him at all. So I stepped into the hallway of the apartment, and I do tell people, as I put my foot in the first step, as Paddy answered the phone. And he said, Penny, I'm sorry, Aidan is dead. So when I talk about hope there, I mean, my world is divided into my foot in the hall and my foot on the step. And the future just disappeared, just wiped out. So we came, no, not even, we came home actually before that, went upstairs, got organised to get a flight home the next morning. And in between cleaning, constantly cleaning, and he would sit down, and I would clean, and I would sit down. And I thought, and I know this sounds like I've just made it up, but I said out loud, I will not be dead man walking if I am forced to be alive. And because of Maddie and Megan, I had no choice. I knew, I looked at them and thought, I have no choice, I can't die. If I have to be alive, then I won't be dead man walking. I will speak for him, because in terms of even taking heroin, none of his friends really knew except the friend he told and another friend who also took heroin. And it's because he was ashamed of it, of the stigma. I thought, well, I'm not ashamed of Aidan, and I wouldn't let anybody else. So I made that decision, and I had literally no idea what the next step would be. Anything, and I mean that actually making the next step in my life even. So that's what I did. I made that decision then. It's extremely hard to explain what it feels like to lose your child. My brother died to suicide, my father died in the same year, my mother died when I was a teenager, and all of them together do not even compare, they don't come close. When I say the future was wiped out, there really wasn't anything. Every time you had an unguarded moment, that is all there was, just pain. The two ways I would describe it, in trying to describe it, was like being at the bottom of a black quarry and holding on out to a tiny blade of grass. That was the only thing that I had. If I thought of the future, I couldn't think of the future, because all I could see was an interminable black path until I would be allowed to die. And again, they sound like throwaway words, but that's exactly what it was, being forced to be alive for other people, no matter how much I loved them, you know. But thinking, what am I going to do? How will I get through this life? So I thought, well, I can't. All I can have is this second. All I can do is get through this second, and the next second, and the next second. And I could only do it by being busy, by being focused, by talking for Aidan. I went to, the day after his funeral, I went to his grave, and I met another mother there whose daughter is buried just up from Aidan. And I felt so much physical pain. I couldn't believe that I didn't think I could live because I was in so much physical pain. And I said to her, because remember I'd already had experienced in my head grief, I knew that you can get to the other side of it. And I said to her, when does it get better than this? In other words, when will I not feel that I'm going to die? And she said, it'll never get better than this, but you will be able to manage it. You know, looking back to it, I think there probably was a little, not hope exactly, but she was still alive, and she was still alive a number of years later. So there probably was a in my head too. So I lived in this moment. I went back to work very quickly within a week after the funeral. I'm a nurse, I manage a nursing home. I focused on the care of the people who lived there. In fact, in many ways, I was probably driven even more to try to get things right, to try to speak on behalf of other people. I supported people, I supported staff, I supported other members of my family. And that in itself was very different because everybody's trying to find their own path, and a lot of people who are suffering together are not great for each other, you know, too. But so I also, every second in your head is, I can't even say it's in, it's the, you let him down, you let him down, you let him down. And he's here, and he's still here. But I can barely look at him, and certainly then I couldn't even look. I searched everyone on, you know, Facebook on my computer and downloaded all of his photographs and put them in a file. I printed out photographs, put them around the room. I couldn't look at them. In fact, I couldn't, for over a year, sit in the room where the photographs even were. I had to have him, but I couldn't look at him. Because I knew if I did, I would actually drown. I would have no hope. And I had to get through this period of time. So I focused on doing things. I raised money, I did sponsors walks, and I spoke on his behalf. And Aidan had things that were important in that last time when we actually started talking together, and he talked about the impact of prohibition, the war on drugs, the need for heroin-assisted treatment and for safe injection facilities. And the one thing also too for me was the role that stigma and judgment plays in someone not being able to talk to you, to be open with you. And I'm talking about me in that, you know. So that also was important to me to talk about that. Now, looking at that now, that was finding purpose in life. It didn't seem like that then. What it seemed like was I owed to Aidan to do this. And I had to do it because of that decision that I made that day in Barcelona. If you were forced to live, then you have to find a reason to do it. You have to find a purpose. It wasn't about finding happiness or finding joy in life or any of those things at that point. It was getting through the days. When I was not working, if I went to go to bed, I'd lay in the settee for a year. I remember I went to work, lay in the settee, got up, went to work, lay in sleep, got up, went to work at night, and I kept the television on all night so that if I opened my eyes, it would not be to look at Aidan, it would not be to look at the pain. I kept earphones in the whole time when I played podcasts and books all night. If an earphone came out and I woke up and it straight back in again, it was had to fill every sense with other things. Now, you do have people at the beginning who say, well, no, like, you have to face up to it. And I think, how do you think I'm not facing it? You know, what I'm doing is physically getting myself to the next point that I can survive. So I did through the time, that's what I did. And I look back actually, because he would write in a journal from time to time, and I look back at my first entry, and that was drowning basically. That was just no hope and real anger, no anger towards Aidan. I know people say that, but I had no anger towards Aidan. All I have towards Aidan is this sense that, I let him down. But real anger. Anger, first of all, that I had to be alive. That, when I got to myself, I have to do this, Anger at the whole world. Nearly anger to the point of hatred. But not hatred towards people, not hatred towards individual people, I just felt consumed with anger. Why should my child be dead? Why should I be alive and my child dead? So I look back at that and look at that now. And it was just like torture, I can't do this, But I did, went through the time, and it's only when I look back and say, well, I did this then, I couldn't have done that at the beginning, that I realised the time I was picking things up as I went along. I went on a holiday with my children the next year. I didn't want to go on holidays. That the future meant, as I say, literally nothing to me. But they wanted to go too. And I knew I had to do these things. These things existed. But when I go on holidays, I always plan it as a big thing. I mean, people laugh at me, but I think it was once I was like a travel show. When you were somewhere, do you realise that is, that's the oldest bog and wherever it was, and things like that. But I remember I went to Rome, and I'd never been to Rome. And my other son said to me, because he would ask me questions when we were there, what is that? And I go, well, I don't know. And I remember thinking, he expected me to be the person that I was, and I kind of thought, I'll let him down too now. But couldn't look forward to things. But in my thing of living a life for Aidan, what I did, and say his thing was about going to India, it was because I had been to India the year before. I thought, I have to place something into this horrible future, in order to get there, because obviously I can't look forward to going on holidays. I don't think I read a book I haven't read a book for about 4 years now. I read 2-3 books a week. It's because Aidan and I used to talk about it. I didn't watch a film for, I'm sure, the same period of time. Because again, we talked about that as well. So I thought, I have to put something there. I have to somehow not make that just black, So I got a plan to go to India for Aidan as well. And what I did was I practically planned it, as I do, the way I used to. The minute I was walking through it, if you understand, didn't have the excitement, but I knew it was something I had to do. So I would draw maps, and I'm really ill and terrible geek. I would draw maps, I did the plan, I booked my tickets on the train, I did everything that I was meant to, even try to learn a little bit of Malayalam, but wasn't very successful except saying hello, but anyway. So what I did was lift that plan into that blackness and set it there. So there was something in the future, if that makes sense. That first holiday, I have to say, it was just, I thought, I'm never going to get through this. It was a month as well. I'm never going to get through this. And I just couldn't find any joy in it, but did it. When I came back, I'd done a couple of little articles and things to this whole thing about stigma. One of the journalists tagged me in a Facebook post, and it had been an article, and it was a woman who had lost 2 sons to heroin overdoses. And of course, never read what comes underneath a Facebook post, but there have been very negative comments, as you can expect. So I had to also put a comment on, a supportive comment, and a little bit of my own experience about people's attitudes, and stigma. And she had contacted me then, and she belonged to anyone's child, and it is a campaign of the Transform group, and it's to put a face to people who are, harmed by the war on drugs in many ways. And what they look at is regulation, looking at things like all the things Aidan talked about, heroin-assisted treatment, safe consumption. And I thought, do you know what, they're saying what he said. So it took me about a year to go to a meeting in England. And I remember this was, and there are support groups that are there for people to talk, but I couldn't dwell in my pain. I could not have lived, I can't say that strongly enough, I could not have lived there. And I was always in pain as well, but I had to control my mind. So I went there, and this had a focus. This was the aim of this, was to do something. And when I was there, I actually burst into tears. And I said, it's the first time I've never felt I had to justify my son to anybody, because all those people, their children were exactly the same, And obviously people who have problems with drugs cover a wide range of the population, everybody in the population. But this notion of the poor person who is overdosed in the street or wherever. But it was a chemistry project. And so in a number of these other people's children as well. And the idea basically, it's not to say, well, those addicts are, middle class addicts. I hate the word addict by the way too. It was just to say, there's a face that you're not thinking about. It's to humanize these issues, to make people think again. So that gave me focus. Now I have to say, I am not an outgoing person. I'm very shy, and so is Aidan. Social situations I have to force myself to do. But I have, as I said, raised money. I had been to Westminster, this is with when I was a child. Spoken with council, I've been involved in a conference. And I've done it for that reason, and it is about giving focus and having purpose. When I look at where I am now, 8 years in, I still have in sitting here, there's no sort of resolving at all, I can't tell you that this is all sunshine now and I'm at the other side of it or anything like that. I will never be at the other side of this. If you ask me, then it's hard even to say, I don't believe I should be walking this earth while my child is not here. But what is the purpose of me going there and thinking that? But am I happy? I don't even know, probably not, but I am happy about a lot of things. And 8 years ago, I wasn't, I was just raging. I was either drowning or raging, And I am happy about a lot of things. 2019, obviously before COVID, we went on holiday and I planned, but I look forward to going on holiday now. There's no doubt about it. It's extraordinary because all you see is a gap, I even talked about going to France, which I could, because we always went to holiday in France, but I talked about it. I've read books again, which I couldn't do. I think again about, could I do something? Could I do a course? I couldn't think any of those things at all. I want my children to be happy. And I look forward to their happiness, like to get a job, to buy a house. But I'm still filled with a terrible fear, which was the other thing that you have as well. If your child could die, what else could happen? How could people possibly be happy? What I'm always talking about, like metaphors and things. There is a part of me that believes this is a vale of tears, okay? But it's not reasonable, I know, for me to think that, because in the before time, as I call it, because there was a wee bit of me that could go to, as I say, the dark place, even before it. I always had to have my cup half full, because I always had to focus on, it's not what you didn't have, it's what you do have. So that was always important to me. I knew that that was a way of getting through. So I do know this is true. There are lots of happy people. I see happy people. I see people whose lives look blessed. I'm sure everybody has their problems. So the rational bit of me says, no, everybody's life doesn't have to disappear. So I live with two bits in me. The rational bit that says this is not, Penny, look at the world, and the bit of me says that this is too much. But the balance has changed in them. At the beginning, it only was, I cannot get through this. This is terrible. There's too much suffering. I can't deal with everybody's suffering to this point now. Just over a year ago now, and this we're in the midst of COVID. Remember, I managed a nursing home during this too. I made a decision then in June of last year that I would leave nursing after 40 years career. Now, I think there was an element of it. Well, there was a couple of things. I thought this is a time I am stronger than the 8 years ago, Penny. I'm stronger than that, and now it's the time to push myself out there to do more for Aidan than I was doing. And although managing a nursing home during COVID probably sounds stressful, in a way it was my cocoon as well. I had all the staff who had known for a long time, and we had to obviously talk about focus. That is the biggest focus you have during COVID. In particular, it was keeping everybody well. So I gave probably the longest notice period in history of a year, and in June of this year I retired from nursing. And that really just threw me out there, because your identity you're defined in many ways by being a nurse in particular, careers like that. So, as I say, I have done it, I believe, for Aidan and for other people. And other parents, other family members, and for people who take illegal drugs. I don't know if I can change the world in any great way. I probably cannot. But I do know that talking to people, I had changed their thinking. And they do look differently upon people. I mean, people have said to me, I think I know Aidan even though I have never met him. I was once doing a walk, and it was, I think, the first walk I did after I joined Anyone's Child, and we were walking different ones. I didn't walk 7 mountains, okay? Across the UK, 7 different mountains. So different members of Aidan's family and whatnot. And because at that time, I was told at that time 7 people a day in the UK died from a drug-related cause. Now that number is higher now, I believe it's 10. So we had 7 mountains. And that was on Aidan's birthday. But I was doing sleep Indian with a friend, and we met these 2 guys on the mountain. Now one of them he was running up and down it, like this was his 7.5 time up it, while we were, but anyway, so we sat and we talked for a wee while, and they were both very, and this is the thing I find people very interesting with me, the amount of people who tell me that they have taken illegal drugs at some point in their lives, but they said the same, way back, so, when they were at uni or whatever, and they were middle-aged, or one of them was middle-aged, and he said, I can see what you're saying. I can see how regulation, would do that, when something doesn't need to be done or whatever. Now, I have no spiritual belief whatsoever, okay? And that's why I have no hope, I believe, I've ever seen Aidan, and that didn't come about as a result of this. I have never done, and that's why I say I face the truth of that. But there's little connections, So we'd finished talking. And I said, look, I'm Penny, and I had on my t-shirt, which had Aidan on the back of it. And he said, oh, nice to meet you, I'm Aidan. So I said, there's another Aidan who's going off into the world and saying, I met this woman, whose son was called Aidan, and here's the story. So when I get to now, I think my problem is, and I say this has forced me to look at it, I thought hope meant happiness. Hope meant there was a shiny world on the other side of this. But I think it is hope without maybe, and I didn't call it that until probably I was asked to look at this. But hope was that ability to see there is the next thing. That woman, that first woman that I met, she survived. A woman who lost 2 children survived. They weren't physically dead, which was my concern at the beginning. They couldn't possibly live. There was placing myself into the future, not having to look at the future and go, oh, well, it's all going to be grand and time or whatever. It was actually lifting something and putting it there, and I had to work towards it. That decision that I made that day without knowing it too was finding purpose. And that purpose has grown. Now I'm in a position to say I've retired, but not in inverted commas. I need to consolidate my way, but do you know what too? The world is kind of open. The blackness is the path still black. Do you know what it probably to some extent is? But I don't go there. But I look forward to the day my children have their children, to their happiness. I could again go to the fear, but I don't. I set it aside. I do not attempt to destroy myself. I have to say, I find it through trying to do things for other people, trying to do things for Aidan, trying to live a life that shows how much I cared about him. So I try to do that. I try to do things that matter. I try to be a better person. So what I have done is I've created purpose. I've created a reason to be here. I am not going to drown. I am not going to die. I know I am not. I laugh about things. I go places. I make plans. I can even glimpse in. People, and they quite frequently say this, remember the good times. Now, I did for a little bit think, is this just me, that I can't think about the good times because they torture me too. But I've spoken to other people who've lost their children and they've said exactly the same. All you get is little glimpses of the good times because one thing is that we went on holidays to France, so we loved the pool. We were always even as adults, we're most people who play games in the pool, inflatable animals and do races. And I can think about that, and I can think of it as a youngster even for a second. And then you think, oh, but I should have done it for splashing. And then you get that stab of pain again. Now, maybe the day will come when I will be able to say, do you know what, I remember that and Aidan loved that, and and what I think now is, maybe that day will come. So there is hope without me dwelling in it. When I look where I came from, where I am, and the future is possible. But I have to say, if you ask me, what is the most important thing in terms of hope? It is recognizing how strong you are. It has, and I always believed in resilience, but how powerful your mind is that it can control. I see something that's horrendous, as wanting every time you open your eyes for you not to open your eyes. And it happens because, for me, and different people find different ways of living for this second, letting this second become this minute, focusing on something else and finding purpose, controlling those things that are going to destroy you. No one can tell me that you can live in this world and ever be okay that your child is not here. What I say with hope is, if I can now call it that, is Aidan makes a difference, because what there is of Aidan still is within me, and whilst I'm alive, he'll be alive. And people say his name. People have always, that's the thing I've always said to people, could you just say his name? And people always do that now, so that keeps him here too. So I don't know what the future will hold, but at least I'm not petrified of the future. I'm not angry anymore. Little glimmers of anger sometimes actually, but not that big massive rage within me. I am still, there are days that you think, I can't get through this. And that does make you look up and angry and think, I'm not allowed to wallow. I'm doing this to myself because I can't deal with it. So I give myself 5 minutes of wallowing. And I don't mean that as an insult. I'm talking about me. But I go on because I say that would destroy me. My thing about the stigma and maybe the judgment and stuff, that does torture me too, but I try to control it as well. That Aidan couldn't come to me and talk to me. But if you asked me, would I judge this person because their child, had died of a heroin overdose, were they not supportive enough? Did they let their child down? I would say, don't be ridiculous. They did the best that they could do, all that they knew. So my rational bit says, didn't apply the same to yourself. So whether the hope is that rationally I know that, so maybe there is a point in the future where I can show that compassion towards myself. So I know that all sounds very, is that positive? But if you could come from there to here, then there's a chance of it going further. And I say, I'm not wishing for the day that I will die at all anymore. In fact, there's ways that I don't want to die because Aidan will still be alive in the world whilst I'm in it. So that's what hope is. It's about strength and purpose.